Hi, Apostle Jeremy Scott Gibbs. I'm joined with Prophet Kenneth DeMars Jr. And this is part 2 of talking about the office of the prophet. And we left off, we were talking about a couple of things, what is prophecy for and what therefore is what the prophet's really for.
Right.
And the one thing I wanted to touch on that we both alluded to was 1 Corinthians chapter 14, and it says in verse 3, "But everyone who prophesies speaks to men for their strengthening, encouragement, and comfort." And understanding that a prophetic word needs to do one of those three things. Either strengthen, encourage, or comfort. Now, many times we look at the Old Testament prophets and we see a lot of negativity. Well, in order for me to strengthen you, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, you're being obstinate to the Spirit of God, you're not walking by faith, if I want to strengthen you, I've got to tear down what you're trusting in order to strengthen you. Okay? But realize in the New Testament church, it's a little bit different dynamic. So when we're understanding strengthening, encouraging, and comfort, it doesn't always mean that it feels good at the time. But the purpose of God is to bring you to a stronger place, a better place, a deeper place of relationship with Him. So I know that with you, Kenneth, you've had these opportunities to prophesy and to share really in an office of a seer. What does it mean for you to operate in that area of strengthening, encouraging, and comfort? And you talked about it in the first part of that is the focus that you really observed by the Spirit predominantly is how am I encouraging this person? Go ahead with that. Just
well, yeah, to expound more from part 1, it's really something the Lord has packed in me, and that is it's a joy to do those things. Yeah. If I'm not doing one of those three things, or if the Lord isn't doing one of those three things, either I'm not paying attention or I'm not being fulfilled.
Right.
And, it doesn't always come out in spoken words. Sometimes it's just I see a thing and I need to conduct myself a certain way around somebody.
How many of those times where you see things, and this is an aspect of the prophetic that doesn't always come out in a lot of the popular teachings, how many of those times where the Lord shows you something prophetically that you're never supposed to talk about, you're just supposed to pray about?
It seems like 100% of the time. Obviously it's not, but it's very close.
Right. So you're literally speaking to men in the spirit versus speaking to them physically in the natural.
Absolutely.
You're speaking over people. By men, we mean women and as well. But
right.
You're speaking over people in the spirit. So you get in your time of prayer, and the Lord shows you something. You begin to speak that over them. Right. So how powerful has that been in developing that prophetic gift in you?
Oh wow! Oh man, that's probably. For what it's went through, for what I've went through, as far as my prophetic, as it's built up, it's probably the number one thing, and it really happens even outside of my prayer time. Okay. I mean, I'll just be around somebody, and I'm making sure that I'm sensitive, and the Lord's, I usually don't think about it. It's really becoming second nature.
Right.
But the Lord will just have me just do something different,
okay,
or talk different, or to just
change up the way you're conducting yourself. Just you're becoming all things to all people by some means to strengthen, encourage, and comfort them.
Right. And the more I do that, the more susceptible and receptive to it I become.
Right.
It just happens more. It becomes more natural.
So how much does the prophetic? This is kind of a rhetorical question, obviously, but how much more does the prophetic flow in you as you're sensitive to the Spirit and then hang out with other people?
Oh man, especially when I'm around people. That's especially when it happens, because the Lord always wants to pour out. That's just the bottom line. He wants to pour out. So the more I'm connected with people, the more I'm around people, believers or unbelievers.
Right.
The conduct, the things being said, the things being shown, they're always increased, because the Lord is always wanting to give them a taste of Him. Yeah,
He wants to taste and see that the Lord is good. It's the goodness of God that brings people to change their heart and mind. Repentance is the word we use. But change their heart and mind to think differently, to reconsider their way.
Right.
So in that aspect, again, this is another office in what we commonly call the fivefold ministry gift. But that office really... again, it's about relationship.
Absolutely.
It's about connection and relationship. So the more you're connected in relationship with other people, the more your gifting really flows. It
connects me more to the Lord.
It connects you more to the Lord by connecting you more with people as well.
Right.
So this is a phenomenon that I've experienced, and I know I've put it on you a little bit, and I wanted everybody, the people watching, to really get a sense of this. I mean, you can't really get a sense until you flow in it yourself, but to at least be exposed to it. How much do you sense or feel the pull on the anointing when you're around other people? Now I know when I'm around and in a teaching environment, even not a teaching environment, there are times where anybody in the fellowship will come up to me at different times, just hanging out in the kitchen or doing something like that, and they'll go, "I got a question for you." And I like to, Guy's one of the people that I like to tease, and he'll say, "I got a question for you," and I say, "I might have an answer," because my answers are dependent upon the Spirit, so I might or might not. I might have to tell you, "Hey, you're gonna have to go pray about that because I'm not really sure." But I know that there's a pull on the gifting in me, and people have an expectation when they get into my presence that God's going to flow through me, and so they come to depend on that and pull on that, and I can sense that. How much have you sensed that? Maybe not where they're conscious of their pulling, but they get in your presence, and you feel the gift of God being stirred up within you to flow into their life.
Actually, that's exactly where I was going to go from your original question. Is lately, especially lately, I've been noticing in myself, I can sense as I get around people, it's not a conscious thing, but it's always there. It's waiting. Someone's, especially a believer or in our body, they're really kind of waiting for something to come out, something to happen, something to be built up. There's that expectation there. But honestly, for myself, and this really comes from before I was really spoken over as being a prophet, I've always noticed that every so often throughout my life, someone ends up coming in, and to me, for almost next to no reason, they're just stuck to me, kind of like a leech, really. And
you're not the best example, but
right.
But that's how connected they really are.
Yes, to where, for whatever reason, and because I'm looking at myself and thinking we really don't have anything in common. But they enjoy being around me, and I never really was a degrading person. I usually would come out and be very, well, not very uplifting. I was very neutral, because I didn't have the Spirit of God in me. I didn't have life. So I was a lot introverted, which really made me think, why does this person latch on to me so much? But whenever I got around that person, I was very encouraging. And in fact, there was one lady when I was in high school. She would always come to me for counsel. She would, and I'm like, I'm not a counselor. I know I'm not a counselor. I don't want to be a counselor. I didn't want anything to do with people's problems. I hated my own. So, and she would always come to me, but I would always have something that would eventually lift her up and get her spirits going. And I always scratched my head at that. I didn't quite understand it, but now being a prophet, I see why. Because that gift was in me from the time I was born, and the Lord was pouring out. He did a lot of protection on me as I was coming up.
And that's one aspect that I bring out in the actual fivefold ministry gift teachings and some of the other things but the calling of God within a person, the calling of God within you. And that's why it's so important to know your calling. First, it's important to know the Lord. That's predicated on everything. But then after that, to know what you're called to do, because your calling is the essence of who you were created to be. And if you don't know your calling, that's why Kenneth has a glimpse into his future to know that he's eventually going to step into the office of an apostle, because God wanted to share that with him, and give him some insight and some foresight to say, you're eventually going to step into this, and that's the essence of who you were created to be. So as you're growing as a prophet, you're going to eventually step into the fullness of who you are, and I want you to know that, so that you're not unaware of that, and that's powerful in that. So I just want to wrap up this part. We're going to do a part 3 and talk about a couple other things about what it means to have what a prophet does really in the person's life, and laying a foundation. That's one of the aspects we'll talk about, and that's out of Ephesians chapter 2. We'll look at that. And so I just want to thank you once again for joining us. This was part 2, talking about the prophet, and we just want to say God bless, and we'll see you shortly.